And we're back. Second episode. Welcome to the sunny side, the first and only ASUN basketball podcast. I'm your host, Al of the Al and Pops Duo. I really appreciate everybody, man, who watched or interacted with the first one. Or just reached out on Twitter, gave it a view on YouTube, man. I really appreciate it. You get a chance to subscribe, like, share, whatever you feel like doing is much appreciated. It's been great just interacting with people from other places in the ASUN, especially with this team that we're talking about tonight. I've had some in-depth conversations with a super fan down in Stetson, and kind of gave it away. This is our second week of the team previews, right? And we're going front to back. We're going from worst to best in terms of record-wise. Stetson was even here, but really they to me are one of the biggest question mark teams. So really I wanted to dive into Stetson a little bit, watch some of their games from last year, and then come back with some good information for you guys. Hey, once again, here we go with the wine shirts. The first note I will get out of the way, though, mid-majors will be in the tourney, and that's it, boys. I won't say nothing else about it. Mid-majors will be there. Without them, without us, what do they have? I mean, the tourney won't sell, right? That's the one shining moment, baby. All right, so here we go. We're going to do the Stetson Hatters team preview. This will be the fourth year under my man, Donnie Jones, incoming. Donnie actually played hoops at Pikeville, man. Shout out to Pikeville, one of my best friends in the world from Pikeville, the Clevengers up there. Donnie, man, hopefully you ate at Mustang too, got you a grilled bun, put some onions on that hamburger, get you some on that bad boy. If you ever come back through Kentucky, man, give me a shout. Come chop it up with me. Let's talk over some lineup scenarios. Let's talk over how many wins we're going to get in the ASUN this year. All that good stuff, man, from a Kentucky guy. I know you're just right outside West Virginia, but really cool to see somebody come play for Pikeville and then do the things you've gone on to do, man. That's very, very cool. It is his fourth year, though, and Mr. Jones, I'm not trying to get at you at all here, but so fourth year here, had a little bit of success, right? He's a career 51% win percentage. Never made it to the NCAA tournament. So in my mind, and people down in Stetson might not ever think anything, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this might not be a make or break year for them, but at the same time, it definitely is a year that I would say you need some improvement. Just in stock wise, I think he did a great job of recruiting this year and has done a great job in the past of recruiting. So that's something to always hang his hat on. I really would love to see Donnie get a couple wins down here and actually make something. Before I get into it, though, I rewatched the last week's episode, man. I really want to apologize to my man Dallas Howe. Didn't mean to come off any kind of I felt like he was the only person I was like, I didn't even say anything positive about the dude. But let me tell you, young man, that's a hell of a basketball player. Big apologies for me. You will forever be and know more about the game than I do, be better at the game and stuff. But yes, Dallas Howe, sorry, man, I'm going to get some of those wrinkles out and I'm going to be positive to everybody. I didn't mean to just sell all negativity to your way, just shade, man. So, yeah, sorry about that. And then really another thing is fair warning, man, for all the Stetson fans, I'm probably going to give you some locker room motivational material here. Might be a little unfavorable, but I am going to go deep into what we expect from people here, what we expect from the additions, what lineups I think might work, how are they going to place in the conference season throughout the league. I'm going to put as much a positive spin on as I can to give you best case scenario too, because I do think there are some best case scenarios to be had here for Stetson. But let's get into it, man. Last year's record was 11-19. A couple big wins. I wouldn't say big wins, but big wins in non-conference. You got College of Charleston. That's a big win, and really played Miami really close, and that Miami team just got better and better and better. A little in-state rivalry there, so that might have played into it, but played both of those people close. In conference, you go 5-11. You have 4 overtime games in the conference, right? And you went 1-3. 2 of those are against North Florida. And really, if you think about that, right, 3 of those losses could potentially be wins, right? Those are last second one possession kind of deciding games. So it'd been interesting to see them get to that 7 wins, that 6, 7, 8 wins, and then, get that little uptick and see what they could have done, right? Maybe Rob Perry plays the whole second half of the season, and maybe that 5 turns into a 9, and that's serious business that could have happened. A lot of close games there. Had conference wins against EKU, Jack State, Lipscomb, North Florida, North Alabama. So you beat who you're supposed to beat, right? Last year in EKU and North Alabama. I think the other 3 wins, you go Jack State, Lipscomb, and North Florida, all big dubs, all against prime competition, especially Jack State. That's a huge win. Played Florida Gulf Coast really tough. Could have had some wins there as well. In terms of team stats, this is going to go into, once again, kind of just like we did in North Alabama last week. Everything I think that I point out here that teams struggled with, I think all coaches in the ASUN have done a great job of addressing those numbers. Now, might not be looking at the same thing, right? They might not care about these analytics. They might not care about these stats. Maybe they just see in practice every day, but they for sure are addressing the needs right here. Okay, so these are based on conference ranks and stats. They're 9th and 10th in field goal percentage on both offense and defense, right? 9th in 3-point attempts, 9th in points, 10th in 2-point percentage, 9th in assist. So you can kind of see there, right? We need buckets, and we need them in a bad way. And really not just points in general. We need some efficiency on the offensive end in general, and really on the defensive side too, right? Like that's pretty high field goal percentage overall. But really on the offensive end, if you finish in that 9, 10, 11, 12, and really, you stretch it out with more teams this year, you finish in that bottom half with the way the league is going, the way that the league is improved, and really just the way the game's trending, the shooting percentages have to go up. Shooting percentages must go up for them to get any better. Mr. Jones knows that. Coach Jones knows that, right? If you look at his recruiting class, he knows that. All right, and then they're first in turnovers on the offensive end, so that's a big one, right? And if you look through Donnie Jones' career, that's something he harps on, right? We don't just give the ball away, but I do think that is a huge, huge thing to be said about their lead guard, my man, Mr. Swinson. First in turnovers on offensive end, that's got to be one of the guys with the biggest usage percentage of the ball in his hands and most times. It really says something about him. Some Ken Palm numbers too I want to throw in here. They're 308th in possession length, 292nd in offensive efficiency. That's got to go up. 255th in adjusted tempo. That's bottom half of the league, bottom half of the league in the ASUN. And 300s in both offense and defense 2-point percentage. So when you get there, get easy buckets, got to make them count. Got about 61% of their threes or points off threes last year. That's saying something too, right? Because I just said, that they struggled on offensive efficiency. So if you're still getting 61% of your scores through threes, and you didn't even shoot it really that well, you should have one of the best shooters. You still have room to improve there, and I think that's something you can do pretty easily. And here's a telling stat really for Coach Jones. 0.0% in 2-foul participation percentage, and that tracks if a starter gets 2 fouls in the second half, how often does Donnie play those guys? And I can answer for you, that is never. Okay, that's 358th in the country in that category. Donnie does not play that. If you get 2 fouls in the first half, get out of there. Okay, and that's really something. That's one of my favorite stats. Not one of my favorite stats. I don't think that really tells you much about the team in general, but that tells you a lot about the coach's decision, right? So maybe we're attacking the paint, guys in the paint as much as we can, as much as possible to start the game. Maybe we get a couple early fouls on these guys, and we know for sure Donnie will sit them, right? And then on the other hand, you think, well, if he's not playing anybody with 2 fouls, that means he truthfully believes in his depth, and he believes in the guys he has on the bench. I think that's a great thing. I think especially in the ASUN here, we got some really deep teams with all the recruiting classes coming in. He doesn't have to move from that, right? If he believes in his depth, he doesn't have to move from that. All right. So we're going to dig into the departures portion of this team preview. And really, this has to be the hardest part for Stetson fans, right? You're losing your big three. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say your big three, but three. I mean, your building blocks of your team. Okay. First person, Rob Perry. 3 years at Stetson, gone to Murray, didn't play the second half of the year because of academic reasons. Now, I graduated from a rival school, Murray, so I will say he's probably got a good chance to do some good there. I don't think that's very high-quality education out there in the mountains. So, Rob, go have fun, play some basketball, man. That's a huge basketball program. I mean, that's talk about playing out there. He's going to do very well. But 19 and 20, all A-Sun freshman, A-Sun Rookie of the Year. 15 points per game in conference in all 3 years. All right. Only played in 2 conference games last year. So really coming down the stretch there, if he plays, Chase Johnson has just as good as year, and then Rob does just as good as well. That could even go up. He's a career 40% three-point shooter. Something I did not know. I think just watching Rob Perry play, you wouldn't guess that. He's top 3 in scoring in 1920 and 2021. Top 10 in offensive win shares in 1920, top 3 in points produced in 1920 and 2021. Of the 11 wins last season, Rob was listed as the MVP by KenPom on 5 of those. And he did play after the win at home against North Florida on January 8th. Really, the biggest things I want to point out there, too, is the points produced in the top 3 in 1920 and 2021. If he plays all last year, that's another top 3, top 5. If he plays the rest of the year, that 11 wins, if it turns into 13, Rob's probably the MVP according to KenPom on a few of those too. And really, if you just go down through the list, they were so close here. And look, we'll just go ahead and do it. Why not? If you go down through who they played throughout the season, and that back half of, you had 2 overtime losses, one at Florida Gulf Coast, 7 points. Could have been a win. You had a loss at home in North Florida to end the season by 5 points. You had a loss at Kennesaw State by 4 points. You get blown out at home against Jacksonville, but then you go to Liberty and play strong, right? So then you even Central Arkansas by 4 points. You add a all-A-Sun player to this team last year, a few of those wins flip. You maybe finish in that top 3 or 4 of the league. They get a good draw in the league in the playoffs. You keep all your horses. What happens on that playoff push last year? Does this team look completely different if Rob Perry doesn't do that, or if Rob Perry doesn't have those academic struggles? It's all those what ifs and how good of a player he is. It's just it's tough that we didn't get to see all that, right? He's a real deal. Just a bucket, man. He's going to go even against Tier A and Tier B competition, according to KenPom. It's nearly the same numbers, right? He was just as effective against guys in the Power 5. They're going to get a guy. Murray's going to get a guy. I'm going to be watching him all the way throughout. And then really the second and probably most heartbreaking part, I don't know if it's heartbreaking, but in my eyes, it's got to be heartbreaking, is Chase Johnson. Chase Johnson, 2 years at Stetson, career 39% three-point shooter, might as well be 40. And he takes 8 threes a game, which is absolutely absurd to take that many attempts and shoot that well. And really, if you watch him, how he takes these threes, right? A lot of them come off those quick pin downs, and he's wide open, right? Or you run a base set for him, and then he gets a look. But really, in that second half of the year, Chase had to get a lot of those strictly off his own hands. Those were all created from him. Those were all, let me get to one side, kind of single a man out, give him a little 1-2, and then pull. Multiple occasions he does that a game, especially on the back half of the year when his usage percentage went up here. I think you're going to see more of that where he went, Florida Gulf Coast, and we're going to get in that, of course, way down the line in the team previews. But I mean, just an absolute knockdown shooter, absolute scorer. He was 12th in win shares both seasons and top 15 in true shooting percentage. And if you think about what I just said in terms of 8 attempts from behind the line, and then those 8 attempts being hands in his face, off the dribble, being the guy that has to take those attempts and still being in the top 15 of true shooting percentage, I think that's astounding. Your top 20 both seasons in box plus or minus, top 15 in offensive win shares both seasons, top 10 in points produced both years, top 10 in steals both years, or just last year. So this is the guy. This is a leader. This is a program changing offensive weapon, I think. Of course, defensively, I'd say he'd be the first person to tell you he's not a stopper. His defensive numbers aren't bad, but once again, he's not going to go shut down your best guy. You're getting an absolute offensive stud, especially in the ASUN. Who knows what he's going to look like at Florida Gulf Coast? But the cool thing about him playing at Stetson, I think Donnie Jones knew exactly who Chase Johnson was, and he knew exactly how to get Chase Johnson into his spots or to give him opportunities. Maybe not get him in spots, but get him opportunities to get to where he wanted to be. So that's cool. I'm going to be interested to see what they do with him in Gulf Coast because of the amount of weapons. I don't think that Chase Johnson's ever played anything like that with college. So surrounded by weapons, does that help him get more open looks, or does that kind of single him out to one spot of the floor? I'm not sure, right? They have so many different people out there that it'll just be interesting to see how that meshes. But he goes to Florida Gulf Coast, right? And my first question would be, why? You play 2 years, you're going to be an all ASUNer probably. Put this team on your back coming up, maybe get, 5-6 wins again, maybe make a run. But really, he had so many offers. It's pretty crazy to think about it. So he goes Memphis, South Florida, Central Florida, Butler, Providence, Cincinnati, and even had an offer to go to Memphis and check it out, right? So big time offers there for him to go places. Maybe he turns into just a sit in the corner and jack it up kind of guy at a couple of those spots, but really it's hard for me not to imagine him at a place like Butler and Cincinnati just absolutely doing big things. But he chooses Florida Gulf Coast, right? And he was on an interview with the transfer portal guys. And he says, I don't think you can get a better coaching staff. They bring a winning mentality and a winning culture. That's what I want to do. I want to win. There you go, right? So you have one of the best returning players in the ASUN. And really, if we're playing poker and he had all his chips, he chose Florida Gulf Coast and he's all in, right? If we're playing roulette, that's where Chase Johnson's at, right? And I think for a guy who's that good at basketball and knows the game that well, has been in the ASUN for a while, I think just his opinion on choosing Florida Gulf Coast should tell us all something, that they're going to be pretty damn good. Question for everybody. Is he the best shooter not named Darius McGee? Does he win a 3-point contest against Darius McGee? Just spotting up. And then really, who would you want to take a wide open or even one off the bounce 3 if you needed one in the game? Johnson's hit a couple game winners. I mean, so is Darius McGee. That's one of the best players ever in the ASUN, but really for those two are undoubtedly the best 2 shooters in the ASUN. Yeah, and we're going to keep rolling with these departures too. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this just because they lost a piece. They lost a piece. The next guy is Christian Jones, and I don't mean to mention him last because maybe he's definitely not the flashiest name of the top 2 guys. Averaged over 10 points per game each of his seasons there. Not a great shooter, but super efficient, super effective. You hate to call him a glue guy because he was kind of that guy who really went and got buckets when they needed him at times. When they had to score, he went and did it. A lot of times he would initiate some offense. He was a playmaker sometimes and also had good rebound numbers. Rebounding at a 5 per game clip both his years. He's top 5 in win shares in 20 and 21. that's saying he's a basketball player, right? If you get 10 points per game and then you're top 5 in win shares in 2021, that's big time. Top 20 in minutes every season. That just shows you Donnie Jones trusted him with his life. Top 15 in points produced the last 2 years as well. So those playmaking abilities maybe don't show up in the stat sheet with tons of assists, right? Because you had another guy in Swinson who racks those up. But in points produced, right, that the past 2 years, he's the only of these three guys I've listed. Well, actually, Rob was in there as well, but another guy in the top 15 of points produced, right? And you're losing those two pieces. Christian Jones, in my eyes, is a professional basketball player. I'll be interested to see where he goes. Maybe not NBA right away. Maybe it's an overseas type of gig. Maybe it's a G League. I'm not really sure. He is a professional basketball player in my eyes. It's kind of a shame that maybe he didn't get a chance to really, really shine because you had guys like Johnston and Perry there. But, man, what a career. Hats off to you. Very, very just a great basketball career, man. Christian Jones, big piece right there to lose. So all in all, right, you got all three of those guys. You lost 42 points per game, 14 rebounds, 6 made threes, and 5 assists. All right. And when you're playing at a tempo that they play at, score the amount of points they scored, I think it was like around 72, 71 a game, right? 42 of those are gone. Now you got used to it not having Rob there at the back half of the year anyways, but that is such a big piece to lose out of a team that only had 5 wins anyways in the conference. So, and most teams, I'm not going to say everybody, most teams, 75% of teams in the league got better, a lot better. I think this is one of the few teams in the league that lost a big chunk and maybe didn't replace it with proven parts. And really, in terms of replacements, we can go ahead and follow and go into additions. And if we go back to the numbers, okay, let me go back here to the numbers. We're talking about 9th and 10th in field goal percentage, 9th in 3-point attempts, 9th in points, 10th in 2-point percentage, and 9th in assists. You hear that, and you hear the departures as well. Okay, so what do we need? What do we need? We got to have some offense, right? Got to have some offense. And really, I'll start with maybe one of the most compelling. I think it's the most interesting. He was Sam Peake, player out of Wesleyan, NABC first team All-American, 6'7", averaged 17 points per game, took 91 threes and shot it at 35%. This man shot a lot. I mean, he was the guy. He can create, does turn the ball over a little bit. One thing I do love just about the film that I have watched on him, his mid-range to mid-post game is so unique, man. He's got a couple of little one-legged floaters from different angles that he can get to, which you don't really see out of a guy who shoots as many threes. So when he gets to those spots, I think he can still shoot. Now, 6'7", if he has a mismatch in the post, right, you get a bad switch on him, I think he can make you pay. I don't know if he's got those post-up abilities. I didn't necessarily see those. But if you get a guy, and then, secondly, you're 6'7", you get a big guy who can't move very well and you want to drag him out. Sam Peake can break this man down and go get a shot. He has that ability. Now, the biggest question here is, what does his success at Wesleyan mean to the A-Sun? How's it translate? I think you go to a lot of mid-majors or just mid-major conferences, you would say, I'm sure, at least this, right? I think this year, the talent in the A-Sun is in the teams and the depth is so deep that seeing what he does at Wesleyan, how it translates here to this top level of the mid-major now, especially if he gets minutes, right? Especially if he's going to be counted on to get those, to fill some of that 42 points per game. It'll be so interesting to see Sam Peake, man. I think he could be such a mismatch at 6'7" with his shooting ability. Maybe not a direct comp to Chase Johnson. I hate to do that to anybody, to do a direct comp. But if you're going to try to get a knockdown 3-point shooter with a little bit of size who can create, has a lot of experience, you can kind of make some bridges there. That's all I'm saying. I think Sam Peake is a really cool addition to this team. I'm so interested of what he can do and how it translates. Best of luck to Sam. The next guy I'll go to, and really, once again, we're going to keep, it's a theme, man. Keep rolling with the shooting and the scoring. That's Luke Brown out of Indiana. He's 4th all-time in Indiana scoring, man. Just think about that, how many people came through Indiana. Indiana high school basketball is no joke, and he is 4th all-time. That is getting buckets for everyone in the family and the second generation to follow and the second cousins. I mean, he's got buckets for everybody in Indiana scoring. Went to Ball State. Really only played 12 minutes a game at Ball State. You don't really know, like, didn't really get to see much. I didn't watch him. I can't say I watched much Ball State last year. He took almost 3 threes a game and really didn't shoot it great. But really, if you're a guy like Luke Brown, the highlights I have seen him in, if you're a guy like him who needs the ball, right, who's going to put more of a quantity piece up in terms of shots and really be a go-to guy, I think that's a hard transition to make, especially if you're 4th all-time in Indiana in scoring. Then you go to Ball State and you're supposed to be a guy who only gets a couple shots a game and has to make them count. That's got to be just a mental switch that's killer, man. So I think him coming to Stetson, I think that is a perfect move for this man. I think this is a great way for him to not only show off that he can shoot, but he can also play make. Now, I will say, Luke Brown, if you do watch this, my man, on YouTube now, Steve Nash is my personal favorite player of all time. Okay. And he's called Steve Nash in one of these YouTube videos. That is some guts, man, to even put your name next to him on a YouTube, any kind of basketball. Steve Nash is point guard, in my opinion. But he has that, though, right? And that's what's interesting. I think that the dude has that. He can get you, especially, I mean, high school, he did it. He can get you 20 points a game. But at the same time, if you need him to create, he can. He can really, really handle. And maybe he didn't get that much of a chance at Ball State to do so. His usage percentage was way, way, way down. So if that usage percentage ticks up and they say, hey, get out there and you're going to back up Swinson. You're going to come in and you're going to try to make some plays and not only shoot it, but we're going to rely on you to try to get some people in their spots as well, get some paint touches to kick it out. I think he's interesting as well. But like I said, there's not much to take from his time there. 18 games for a team that only won 14 games. He only showed up in 18 games for a team that won 14, right? So that's worrisome that the kid didn't play on a bad team. Who knows? Can we, and here's a question for everybody else. Can we put him in the same category with Aiden Cool from North Alabama, Buttery from EKU, and then Potter from Liberty? Can we group these guys together and say, give me some odds. I mean, somebody from Vegas, give me some odds on who plays the most minutes out of those 4, who scores the most points out of those 4, and really who at the end of their time in the A-Sun makes the most all A-Sun teams. This guy, for me, might be the one out of those 4 that I choose as the horse I would pick to be the most impactful throughout his career. And that's saying something, too, because I think all 4 of those guys can play. He already has a year under his belt, so that does help. He might have to play early. Who knows, really? I think you have Swinson there. You have Valdez that could play as well, but that's in terms of ball handling, man. That's about it, right? You can imagine lineups where Brown and then his fellow running mate that I'm about to mention are lead guards. Shout out to Stetson Sports Fan. That's on Twitter at Stetson_SF. Man, he's big on both of these Indiana dudes playing together. Really believes they both can shoot it. Really believes in this Luke Brown kid too. So if you need any kind of Stetson related information, man, give that man a follow. It's at Stetson_SF. Very cool to chat with him to see how he feels about this. And that leads me to the next addition. I kind of already mentioned is Jalen Blackman. Another guy to Indiana, about scored just as much as Luke Brown did in Indiana. Played at Grand Canyon. once again, he's one of those guys that almost just like Luke Brown, just didn't get much of a chance at Grand Canyon on a team that wasn't that great. Still a little undersized, in my opinion, in a guy who's not really, from just what I've seen, doesn't really look to be a super playmaker, but just a guy who's going to go get his own shot, or a guy who's more of a knockdown off a pass, off a paint touch, and knockdown three kind of guy. And I think it makes it interesting on the offensive end if you can play Luke and Jalen together. I think offensively, man, if you can, either of those guys can kind of just grab it and go and initiate, or give it to, again, one of them be a shooter and just be a floor spacer. I think that's great. But what does worry me, they're both on the smaller side. Both of them hadn't played a lot of minutes. You worry about playing kind of 6-footish guys on the floor at the same time, and then you throw that in with Swinson as well. I will say that I believe out of all those guys I just mentioned, the guards of Swinson, Blackman, and Brown, in my opinion, Blackman's got the most pure stroke out of all three of those guys. He gets it off quick too. And a couple of his plays, his highlight plays off of Grand Canyon, man, he just gets it on the kick out and it's up and it's in before you can even blink. I think that's something that translates big time. If you have that form and you're able to get it off quick, set your feet and let it loose. He could potentially be the best shooter out of this class. And I just mentioned Peak and Brown, who are absolute knockdowns, right? So that's your third shooter from Donnie Jones. Okay. It sounds even like familiar to remember North Alabama, right? What did we need? We need stock and ambush. We added that. Donnie Jones needed to add offense. He needed to add shooting. He needed to add people who can go get a bucket. There's three right there. Big time, potentially big time. All with question marks, though. All right. We have, in my opinion here, we have three guys who can play and who are big time offensive guys, but have not proven it on this level. That's a little worrisome to me. A little worrisome. The next edition and the final edition, and another, man, all four of these guys really interesting and just super up in the air of how they're going to be, what they're going to do. It's Alec Oglesby, shout out, same first name, shot it at 40% from behind the line at Cleveland State, but dropped way down to 22% across double the amount of attempts the next year. That's a little worrisome. So, what happens? Confidence issues. I mean, shooters shoot, right? You got to just keep going after it. But you go all the way down to 22%, man. And with the more amount of attempts, the kid's long, 6'6", 6'7", really lanky kid, only played in 6 games last year. So some of those numbers could have improved on those attempts, especially on the 3-point attempts. But you just don't really know. Defensively, he's going to be a bigger guard, right? He's going to be a bigger guard right on the wing spot, ton of length. But the numbers aren't there to justify him being this defensive stopper, right? He doesn't have his defensive win shares aren't up. His defensive box plus and minus isn't through the roof. Didn't average a lot of steals. You would hope that's what he is for this team, because of the 4 people that they added, he potentially has the biggest defensive upside to guard multiple positions. And Brown and Blackman both are kind of stuck in the guard spot. They're not going to be able to switch on any bigs. Peak, I don't know. Can he switch to a guard? Who did he guard at Wesleyan that can be comparable to what he's going to see now? I'm not really sure. But Oglesby looks like a guy that could potentially switch 1 through 4, especially in the ASUN. So where does he fit? Right? Where does he fit? If his 3-point percentage goes way up and he actually shoots the ball really well, you can see him sliding into so many lineups, right? Because that 3 spot for me, and then we'll get into later with these lineups, but there's, you circle a forward spot here that I don't have filled in very well. And he's one of the names that comes into question to fill that like go-to lineup spot. Still being young, still having that 1 year where he shot the eyes out of it. Really, I think this guy, here we go, make the statement again. Newcomer team right here. He's gonna be newcomer of the week, I would assume, a couple times, especially if he shoots it again. Really high on him, just really the way he moves, where he played at, and really how he shot it at Cleveland State, man. I hope that with a little bit of coaching from Donnie Jones, maybe he gets a little bit, some eyes off of him. Maybe he adds a little piece to his game. I think there's a big spot for Alec Oglesby to be a big-time player right here in the ASUN. So there you go. There's your additions, man. We needed offense. We added Peak, Brown, Blackman, and Oglesby. All four of those guys can shoot it better than your average college player. All four of those guys are very, very offensive-minded. And that's because, right, one, your stats say you needed it, had to have it. But two, most of your returners are legitimate defensive guys, can flat out defend the ball. So really having these four guys come in as your X factor of what you needed to improve on the most is the scariest thing for me if I'm a Stetson fan, right? You know the defense is going to travel. You know the defense is going to be there. Having a bunch of question marks, I hate to say question marks, newer guys to the conference come in. You just don't really know, right? But they are banking. The Hatters have to bank on these guys this year to get some buckets. And now, man, we're like I said, the defense, man, it's all the key returners are just flat out. There's some flat out defensive monsters, real big wings, NBA type big guys, big body, big guys. Excuse me. But the first guy I'll mention is Muhammadu Diawara, 1920 all ASUN freshman team, really offensive rebound extraordinaire. I mean, that man is huge. I love to meet him in person just to kind of see how big he is. I met Shigari Aline one time, and it was like, I don't know if I ever see a human as big as him, but Diawara just looks like he's kind of jacked too, man. I mean, that man's had a couple extra meals, so he's not a little small, skinny guy. He's going to push some weight. Third in blocks per game last year, so there you go. I mean, that's you're traveling at a 6'10", 6'11" guy with some weight on him down there at the post and trying to shoot it over him. Points per game have been slowly declining over 3 years as well. Now that could be because his minutes have went down as well. Or maybe his focal point of the offense, just Donnie's just kind of moved away from that, and really just from the pieces they've added, I can kind of probably see that the touches that he's going to get down low are going to keep decreasing. And really, I'm not really sure what Donnie Jones does with him. I think in the games I've watched of his, he often just moves slow, in my opinion. And I don't mean that as a really, I think you can be in the post and move slow and be an effective scorer. You can see Tim Duncan on that bad boy. But it almost like he gets in his position. He gets great down there on a block, great position in the post, gets him deep in there, and then he gets it, and it's like, okay, let me think about what I'm doing. Okay, 1, 2, and now somebody's already here to come and help side, or two, he just hasn't been great passing out of it either. So got to be quicker and maybe even more aggressive. Maybe that's it. Maybe he just needs to add a couple more tools in the post. I'm not really sure. I would be super interested to see what he's been working on this offseason, man. If you could send some offseason workouts, man, Muhammadu, I'll peep him, man. I'm very, very interested to see what you're going to do. But once again, what can he add? He's gonna be there on the defensive side. He's gonna get you rebounds, right? You're gonna need a body like him against a lot of the teams that, got some big people now. The ASUN's not going to be a small league this year. Going to have him on his team. He's going to have to play minutes, but what does he do on the defensive the defensive side, especially now, right? If you think about it, if he's 1 through 4, if we're switching everybody, he's the guy that can't switch. You drag him out. That's, once again, if his feet are a little slow, it's just tough to defend those pick and roll scenarios if you're going to bring him out long ways. I think that kind of exposes Stetson on the back end when you can bring him out and pick and rolls. Super interested in what they do with him, what he does with his game, man. I hope the best for him. Your second guy, and probably my favorite player on this team, and as I started to watch, do some rewatching here this past week of the team and just a couple of games, Steven Swinseth, man, what is not to love about this dude's game on the offensive end. Average 7 and 5, tops 10 in steals in both seasons, second assist per with both seasons. this guy, if I'm coaching a team, if I'm making a team based off ASUN players, I'm doing a draft, it's hard not to just pick him every time just to be on a team, because he's that man is a great basketball player, no matter the size, no matter what he does, no matter his position. He can play on my team any day of the week. I'm team pass first point guards over here, man. I just told you Steve Nash is my favorite player of all time. So Swenson has that in him. The way he probes and then kind of backs out and sees the floor. And really, one thing that's kind of quiet about his game that I like is he will make that probe, will come off a pick and roll. But if it's not there, he's not going to force it, right? His turnover percentage isn't up there. He really makes the right play each time and really got them into great spots, especially not. And once again, this is not any slight to Rob, but once Rob Perry left and you just had kind of him and Chase Johnston on the offensive side, really on creation side, you would see a lot of times where Swenson would initiate the offense, get to a spot, make that first pass, and then that second pass will get to a Johnston or Ponzo, and he would knock it down, right? So his amount of hockey assist, I think, is probably through the roof. I would say it leads the league. I don't know who would ever track that. Maybe I'll do it this year. Once again, I'm the only man who could do it. I'm the only man who watches this much ASUN basketball. So I might track that for you, Swenson, because I think that's how good he is. His big thing, though, he's got to improve his shooting. Shot at below 30% last season. If you're going to be the guy, right, out of everybody who's returning on Stetson right now, he's really your only true offensive, not strictly offensive, but a big offensive piece, right, in terms of usage percentage and everything. If he is going to be the guy, he's going to have to improve some of that. He's going to have to, when he makes those plays or when he breaks a guy down and gets to the paint and gets a paint touch, how do we finish the paint touch? Can he score in that little low post mid range? Does he have a floater like that? We saw a couple little things. Don't know. Like when you play in a system where you're a guy who is the pass first point guard for a couple of years, can you turn a switch in your mind, or really even in your game? Can you turn that switch and be the go-to guy? Can you be the guy when we got 7 seconds, 8 seconds on the shot clock left, he gets it? Can you go get a bucket? Can he be that guy? I'm not sure. I know he can get us a good shot, but I think like I said, with those 42 points per game out of the lineup, that 7, especially if they're going to have success, that 7 is going to have to turn into a 13 to 15. I think. I mean, it's going to have to potentially double or even 12, 13. Add a couple more assists on there. I'm not saying he has to take on the full offensive load, but it has to come up because you're still going to have to. In my opinion, you have to wait on these guards and Brown and Blackman to get used to this. You get used to the ASUN. I'm not saying that they're not used to the college level play, but just kind of ease into the ASUN. I think he will play above those guys for a little bit and see how they kind of work together. But again, he is a smaller guard, not a very small guard, but he's a smaller guard. So if the idea is going to be to play him with Brown or him with Blackman or hell, all three of them together, right? If that's the idea, then what do you do defensively? Because now you still have 2 smaller guys out there. So I'm just wondering, man, that's once again, Donnie Jones, man, if you're making your way to the Pike Bowl, man, let's talk. So Steve Swenson, man, I'm a big fan. I hope, I think legitimately if he makes the leap to being a scorer, look out. I think that's one of your guys, the ASUN, that not a lot of people talk about that you will be if he can make that jump. The next guy I'll talk about is Alvin Tumblin, all ASUN freshman team, 4th in blocks per game, top 20 in both steal percentage and offensive rebound percentage. Absolute athletic monster, 6'7", 6'8". He looks bigger than that. Wingspan's probably crazy. Athleticism is through the roof. If you put him in a lineup, you're taking an NBA team picture and you slide him in there, you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, he plays there. I mean, he's got an NBA ready body, and that's just being in the ASUN with that type of body and with that kind of athleticism. It just makes you a threat defensively automatically, and his motor is high too, and that's something that I really didn't notice until I did a lot of rewatching. Is that he's very, very active, especially out on the break and especially on the defensive end. That piece out on the break, I think, is his biggest opportunity to impact this team on the offensive end. We just didn't get a chance at all really to see what he has in terms of getting a bucket or any kind of playmaking. Doesn't shoot it from three. Really was a guy who got an offensive rebound and put it back, or got it off a Swinson dump off and yammed it home. He can do that every time. I think because of this, that's why for this team, it makes so much sense to me to make him the 5 going forward. And really, if you look at the lineups last year and kind of going down the stretch too, he was the 5 a lot of times because you can make that now. If you add a couple other guys, you make that now. He's a switchable 1 through 5, and that is scary. I think he can guard some guards out on the floor with that length, man. It just gives him so many opportunities. But here's another guy. You talk about Muhammadu too. What can they do offensively for you? You put those two guys together, it's a one great big man with some offensive struggles, right? A great defensive big man, a great rebounding big man, but he still has offensive struggles. Together, like cumulatively, they're going to have to add something offensively to their games. Who knows what that is? I think the sky's the limit for him because of his athleticism and his body. You're potentially looking at a defensive player of the year candidate as he continues his journey to the ASUN, I believe. Your next big returner, I think, is Josh Smith. 7-5. Look at that. Here we go again. 7-5, 7 points, 5 rebounds. First team All ASUN freshman last year. Top 20 in rebounds per. 7th in offensive rebounds and top 20 in blocks. Took almost 6 threes a game, but only shot it at 30%. You'd have to think that improves just because that was his first really year in it. I think maybe this offensive shifting towards the bigs being able to let it loose a little bit more as well. So how does Smith fit, or who does he play with in terms of the bigs, right? If you put him next to a guy like Tumblin or Muhammadu Diawara, you think, well, he's the offensive piece of this kind of defensive-minded back or front court. But really, he's more of a standstill or catch it off a paint touch three-point shooter. Didn't see a lot of, hey, man, let's break this guy down and go get one, or even coming off a screen. It's really off a paint touch, kick, shot. It's how it happens a lot. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I don't think that you can expect him to go out and be a Chase Johnston or even really add that. I think he is a great offensive rebounder, and the defensive numbers I was very surprised with because I was not expecting that. Now, I see a switchable 1 through 5 or switchable 1 through 4. Not in my opinion. I think he has potential maybe to switch up to the 3, guard some forwards, but not as versatile on the defensive end, definitely as Tumblin. But on the offensive end, he just gives you such a cool piece to be a stretch 4 or 5 that you can go along with maybe one of these bigs who are offensively challenged. So it'll be interesting to see that. I think you have the mix of your front court here, all the mixtures in there with your returners. How do you play them? How do they all look coming in? And I'm going to mention this last guy too, because I think he's probably the biggest X factor of them all. It's Ways Panzo. 6'7", absolutely long. 6'7", Patrick Beverly looking dude. Super long, shot it at almost 40% behind the line last year. 2 years consecutively at that mark. JR, and I don't mean this as a bad thing, JR Smith-esque here, man, not in shot quality, but he's an absolute microwave, right? If he sees one go in, you might not see the basketball the next 4 times down the trip because it's going to hit his hands and then immediately go through the net and we're going to jog back. Really, if I see that as a teammate, I'm heat checking him every time he makes, even if he sees a free throw go in, my next possession down, say, where's Ways at? Got to get in the rock. When he sees it go in, man, it's crazy. He's an absolute microwave. It's so cool too. Is where he shoots it from isn't really your traditional shot form, and as well as how he gets up off the floor with a shot. It's so fast, and he doesn't really even jump that much that you almost don't even see it leave his hands. But at the same time, man, it's a beautiful thing to see him get it off and get it off quick. And at that height, being that long, it's crazy. I think there's so much potential there. And really, if you look at his role after Rob Perry left and really look at some of those games, the stats won't tell this story, but there's a lot of times where he or Wazell will grab the board and push, and then he gets them right into what they need to be. Or even really, if you look at that playoff game against UCA, a lot of the times he started bringing that up from out of bounds. He was their lead guard because there's so much attention on Swinson because he was their only ball handler at the end, or only true ball handler at the end, that he brought it up a lot of times because he was in a mismatch. Those guys, the bigger guys, aren't going to come out and guard him because he does have a little bit of that in his game. He didn't get to show a lot of his playmaking stuff, but can you imagine a 6'7" long Wazell Panzo who can play alongside a Blackman or a Swinson, right? Who Swinson's going to be a playmaker as well, but you kind of get this secondary playmaker in Panzo, and you can really pick and choose if you get bad switches too, and that gives you more ways to make the defense pay if he can get to that point where he can get stuff off the dribble, where even if you can bring a couple people out, can you do a big on big pick and roll? Oh man, big on big pick and roll with DOR or something, get him on a bad switch, take a guy in, get a paint touch. Stuff like that I think is what Donnie Jones is thinking. Well, I hope Donnie, because I think that's cool, man. Freshman year, he was top 20 in blocks and steal percentage, so the defensive prowess is there too. I love if you add in all four of those guys. If you go Panzo, you go Smith, you go Tumblin, and you go Diawara, or you have four legit D1 A-Sun bigs right there. But the big question is, when you combine them all, when you play them all together, we already said Donnie's not going to play anybody with 2 fouls in the first half either, so it gives you extreme depth that you need to play that kind of position. But at the same time, I think that if a couple of these guys separate themselves from the pack of that four, then you really have a chance to be something here, right? Like if Panzo makes that jump, what does that look like for him? Is he now one of the lead scorers on the bunch? And I think that's possible. If you look back at last year, I mean, he has the potential just off his shooting to win a game for you. And that is like, they'll say, I think Braun said that about J.R. Smith when they were playing. Like J.R. Smith, if he hits a couple shots, he's going to win a game for us of 7 games. There's going to be a J.R. Smith game, and we're going to win that because he went off. Go back and look at EKU and Central Arc last year. He absolutely did not miss, was unconscious. That's why they win that EKU game. Having that game breaker kind of ability is just something that not a lot of people have. I'll be so interested to see what he does with his game. I think he can add a ton. He's got, once again, it's another NBA ready body, man. That's just crazy. You can see him. If you get a year or two more under his belt, he adds a couple more little things. Why cannot he's a 3-and-D prospect, I would assume. Now you have to add a couple of different things, but I think the potential is there. So now you kind of, you see your roster right here. You see kind of like in the returners. I didn't mention, man. I apologize. Just in going through the stats and everything in the film I watched, I think the guys, along with the additions, I think those are the guys who are going to be the most news and notable. Now let's talk about some lineups, man. My favorite piece of this, and this is really like one of those things I'd love to just get Donnie Jones in the room, man. Crack us up in one of them LAs from Kentucky, dude, and we'll get us some lineups here. But really, I like to do a couple of little variable lineups, focus on different things, and really your lineup of death to your go-to lineup in the last 3 or 4 minutes. I had a little fun with this one though, and this one's called the shoot the three, and hopefully I'm gonna get these graphics up here on this video this time. Like I said, I'm just gonna keep getting better and better, man. So hopefully I can get these graphics up on the video. This is a shoot the three lineup. I'm not saying that Mr. Jones would ever play all this together and wouldn't just say, hey, we're just going to shoot it like crazy. But realistically, you can see this lineup just happening just in rotational matters. But then, as I go through this, just imagine how much shooting is out on the floor and how much spacing there can be. So shoot the three lineup, you have Luke Brown, Jalen Blackman, And really, that's the key, right? If you go back to what Stetson sports fan said, a lot of people are thinking that these two can play together. A lot of people are thinking these two can come contribute. So if that happens, you can see a lot of lineups would have those two there. So you go Brown, Blackman, Peak, Panzo, Smith. 5 absolute knockdown shooters, man, all playing together. Now, ball handling wise, still there, right? If Luke Brown is even a little bit of that Steve Nash, like he said he was in high school, you add in Panzo, who, like I said, has a little bit of that in him. Peak for sure had to do that at Wesleyan. Now, does that translate to the A-Sun? I'm not sure. But you add those 3, they all got a little bit of ball handling. Now, you'd probably have some struggles on defense here, but you got Smith and Panzo on the back end that can block and rebound as well. So that's not too big of a worry, but you have 3 new guys who maybe can't defend as well as those backline guys. So that would be your only kind of misnomer about that whole lineup. But really, that shoot the 3 lineup, man, with Brown, Blackman, Peak, Panzo, and Smith, all knockdown dudes, can shoot it from anywhere. Donnie Jones, what do you think? All right, the next one I have, and really just because they have the ability, I thought this was interesting to do because I think there's going to be some opportunity, especially if you see some lineups on some other teams. You can go big and big for Stetson, especially if they do that like kind of matchup zone to where you can kind of get Diawara where he doesn't have to move a ton, where you can kind of just pass guys off along that back line. You could do Swinson, Oglesby, Panzo, Tumblin, and Diawara. And really, right, if Oglesby is a defensive or does play a little defense at 6'6", 6'7" long, right? So you're talking about 4 people on the floor, 6'6" or bigger. Wingspans all probably in the above average human, right? So those 4 guys. Now Diawara's not going to be able to switch everybody, but still having him on the back line, make everybody else switchable, the athleticism on there. And then really Swinson just to go get him a shot, right? You could put Panzo, Oglesby to spread the floor and still have guys like Diawara and Tumblin who maybe don't spread the floor as well, but can crash really hard, can set screens for Swinson to create, and still are able to have that floor spacing. I think that's interesting, especially against small lineups, especially against people who you want to pack it in against. You can see that Central Arkansas game in the playoffs last year. They packed it in. I love what they did with that matchup zone. Hopefully see more of that. We'll see here. But really, my favorite probably go-to lineup and probably what I would come out of the gates with initially, if I was just coaching a team. Now, I don't see practice every day. This is just from me watching. Swinson, Blackman. And really, I debated here for the 3 spot. I'm going to say Oglesby. You could go Peak or Oglesby. I went Oglesby just because of potential on the defensive side, maybe more. They're similar height. Really, that spot will be who shoots it better, in my opinion. We'll say Oglesby right now, and then you go Panzo and Tumblin. I left Diawara out of here, man, just because in my mind, I just see his minutes keep going down unless he changes something, unless Donnie Jones kind of changes scheme. I think you're going to see a lot of Panzo Tumblin lineups. I think you're going to see a lot of Tumblin Smith lineups. I think you'll see that uptick. And look, if we go to Kim Palm over here, their most played lineups, right? So 22% of the time, their most frequent lineup is Swinson, Johnston, Jones, Tumblin, Diawara. I wouldn't play Tumblin and Diawara together. Now, 22% of the time they did. But you lose Christian Jones and Chase Johnson off that lineup. But in another 12% of the lineup, you have Swinson, Johnston, Jones, Panzo, Diawara. So you're looking at 34% of the time, Diawara is still playing and Swinson still there. So that's 34% of that lineup. You're getting returners. And then you still have Tumblin and Panzo. So really, you just miss that core of Jones and Johnston. But, one thing I will point out here is that when Panzo is in, proportional to playing time, 3.3-point attempts, it's up there for him. He's always the guy shaded in green the most. If you're a Kim Palm fan, you know what I'm talking about. So he demands he's going to have his shots. But what's interesting is the Ken Palm does border thickness around people who have player with possession percentage. Diawara is always up there every time he's in the game. That could just be offensive rebounds. It could be off defensive rebounds, I guess, to an extent. But they look for him in the post. I just don't know if that's going to be an effective way moving forward that they're going to go, especially because his minutes are decreasing too. Don't know if that's going to happen for them. It'll be interesting. I mean, Chase Johnston was in every one of those lineups the most frequent. So was Christian Jones. Who slides in there? I don't think the one's going to change. Swenson's going to be. He'll be the one who brings a rock up when this season first starts. Tumbling will be out there. Panzo will be out there. Diawara will be out there in some form or fashion. Two of those three will start. Smith being the odd man out there, but those guys will start. So those are the lineups, man. I'm really interested to see what they do with, especially what Donnie does with those lineups. He of course he knows more than I do, but it'd be very interesting to see how they do it. Now the X factors. Before I get to the predictions, man, the predictions tough for this one. Like I said, I'm going to provide some billboard material for Stetson hatters right here, but just a couple of X factors to look out for as we kind of wrap this thing up. The duo of Tumlin and Panzo. Do they take the jump? Do they make the jump? I mean, both NBA ready bodies and athleticism and defense. What do they add? What are they in the gym right now working on? Does this look like Panzo just being a more consistent three-point shooter or adding playmaking? And really, Tumlin's the biggest question. I'm not really sure what we can do. I mean, he can finish around the rim like crazy, but what does he add in terms of in shooting, and finishing by himself, playmaking ability? If those two guys make a jump, you'll see. I'm going to tell you how many wins I think they're going to get, but you'll see that win column go up. Right, that's probably the number one X factor for me. Second one will be if Swenson makes the massive leap. Okay, so if those two guys, the first two guys, don't make the leap that maybe everybody thinks they can, does Swenson make the leap? Once again, we talked about him being a pass first point guard. Can he make to being a bucket? Can he be the guy? You can put lineups around him that give him super spacing, right? They give him the ability to be creative. They give him the ability to break a guy down, get a paint touch, and then make the best decision, because he is going to make the best decision for your team. Can he do that, man? I'm so interested to see if this guy can kind of uptick into that 13, 14 points per game and still maintain those assist numbers, still maintain, be able to make those right percentage, those right plays, even if his shot amount goes up. I'll be very interested to see. And really as well as his usage, right? Like I think his usage will go up too, his usage percentage. So it'll be interesting to see if his assist to turnover ratio still stays the same as he goes through that. And then the final X factor, what do the duo of the young guards do right away? And what do they do? Brown and Blackman. Indiana guys, right? They played on that same AAU team together, so that's awesome. They played, I think it's like 18 miles down the road from each other. They probably knew each other, probably went to dinners with each other. I mean, I'm sure they chose Stetson for a reason, right? They want to play together. What does that look like? What does that do in the A-Sun? Now, they could come in and just be an absolute terror. There's a possibility for that. They could come in and absolutely shoot the eyes out of it, and just like we're doing an AAU ball, run a score up on somebody. I think they have that ability. If they can score like that, and if that translates to what they did in high school too now, I think they have that ability. The only thing that worries me is that both of them didn't play much for two bad teams. That's the only piece that worries me. I think the ball handling piece, they are going to be needed right away to handle the ball. Go back to that Central Arkansas game in the playoffs. They attacked Swenson. They took the ball out of his hands. They went and pressed. They had to have somebody else to handle. Those two guys will have to handle early and often. Can they do so, and can they do so effectively? Really, what a cool story, man, if they both do come on the scene and absolutely tear it up. People who played here in high school come to the Stetson Hatters under my man Donnie Jones and absolutely kill it. What a cool story that would be to follow, man. I wish nothing but the best for those young two fellas. But yeah, that's a big X factor. All right, and now the prediction. Yeah, man, I had a couple people reach out to me on Twitter trying to hey, what do your rankings look like? So I'm like, man, just wait for me. I'm trying to do these team previews week by week. Hopefully, based on these previews and predictions, you'll be able to kind of get a gist of where I think everybody's going to place. And really, like I said, Stetson basketball team. So Donnie Jones, man, and everybody I just mentioned, I'm probably going to give you some deal warm material, and that's fine. I have to give my opinion on this. But as of right now, and I'm going to go through it, but as of right now, I would say that they finish around 4-13 in the conference. Really, you start off January, and really I highlighted, hopefully, once again, I'll put these graphics up, man. I'm going to figure it out. In January, you start off 2 home games against North Florida and Jacksonville. All right. And what a way to get punched in the mouth in your own home floor with 2 people who really contenders to win the league. Punch right in the mouth. I think that North Florida game at home to start the conference season really, really will make a big difference there, right? If you can somehow make that a dog fight and win that bad boy, that sets up your whole January. Maybe your whole outlook on the conference changes, right? No matter what you do in the non-conference, you win that first one. Because North Florida's going to be a dog. There's no doubt about it. They were a dog last year. They're going to be a dog again. You win that first one. I think that's a potential toss-up. I gave them an L in my mind here, but I think if you can flip that, it makes a difference. And then once you get home in Jacksonville, L there. Then you go a home stretch away, right? You go to North Alabama, Bellarmine, and EKU all on the road. You could win at North Alabama for sure. I think that's I gave them a dub there at away, or I gave them an L there. Sorry, just because you're away. Because I think North Alabama is going to be just as good, right, or even better. So that road swing is after just getting punched in the mouth, going on a road swing where you got 3 teams in North Alabama, Bellarmine, EKU are all going to be right in that what I believe kind of middle upper pack of the ASUN. If all those 3 teams are all in that middle upper pack, all on the road to start their conference, those are 3 tough ones, man. And then that's 2 at Bellarmine, who they're going to be ready. I mean, like you guys know, the Davenports are going to have their number. They're just going to be ready for them, right? So that's a challenge in and of itself. So coming out of Louisville and then going down the road to Richmond, to where you're going to have to run at full speed constantly at EKU to finish a road trip and possibly score in the 90s to 100s. How hard, man. I have an L there. So really start off with 5 L's in a row. It's tough, in my opinion. Really, you come back home and you get Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, both winnable. I have them winning here at home at Kennesaw State on January 19th, so I have that as a dub. Now, that is not an easy one by any means. There's not going to be any easy ones, but that's just like that North Florida one. If you can get that one, man, if you get one of those, that's big. And then really, you get Kennesaw State there, and it's one of those classic ASUN Thursday, Saturday swings. You get that one on Thursday, get guys going a little bit, get the crowd in there on Saturday for Jacksonville State. Why not give yourself a chance? You could. I'm going to say loss as of now. And then, you go to Liberty. It's Patriots, man. I'm not going to pick against the Patriots. And then you go to Queens, dub, hopefully Queens dub. No, shout out to Queens too, but she's going to pick against you every time now. And then really you go into February, more favorable. Not even that really. You have 2 games against Florida Gulf Coast. You have another one against Jacksonville. You have another one against North Florida. Then you get Central Arkansas comes in after that playoff loss at home. A Central Arkansas team who is going to be improved too, right? And you get North Alabama at home too. All those so tough. I have them winning that February 2nd at North Alabama, and then going on a streak here in February, just kind of like they did in last February. Going on a streak here, some losses until you get back home to Austin Peay and Lipscomb to kind of finish it out. I think they'll win one of those. I think it'll be Austin Peay because, once again, Lipscomb's going to be in that upper middle, man. It's going to be so tough. that really, if you're not ready to play it. So 4-13, once again, billboard material, locker room material for you, Donnie Jones, and your people. Hopefully, not to well, I'm not saying hopefully not people who watch this, but from Stetson, but hopefully you don't take it hold it against me very much. It's just based off my analysis, which who knows if it means very much. So 4-13, definitely finish at the bottom of the league. I have them currently only just a step above Queens in the conference. Best case scenario, though, and I think, like I said, I'm gonna give you a positive spin on it, right? So if you take those flip-flop games, potentially Austin P, potentially North Alabama twice. Who else we got here? Potentially that home game against North Florida, then Kennesaw. You throw in Queens, and then really, if you could figure out, that's a lot of wins, right? But those are all just like they played last year, man. I think they'll be in it. I think they'll be in it, but it's just so hard to tell. If you can flip flop a couple of those and get to like a 6-7 win season, I think that'll be huge for this program. I think if you get to 7-8 wins, I think that those X factors that I listed, and Swenson making a huge leap, and Panzo and Tumblin making a huge leap, I think it'll be big time on the returning guys. And really, this is one of the few teams I'm going to say that really their X factors are the guys they already have. But as of now, 4-13, Stetson Hatters, man, shouts out to you. Shouts out to Donnie Jones and Pikeville. Once again, hey, man, if you come through, let's hit up Mustang too. Let's get us a hamburger. If you stayed all the way through this and you watched the whole thing, I really appreciate you. You must be a huge Stetson fan or just an A-Sun fan. Please reach out to us on Twitter, man. The more conversations I have with people around A-Sun, I talked to some people from Kennesaw State, which is cool. I talked to people from Stetson, which is cool, EKU, which is great. And really just having that conversation between people in the A-Sun, it's been the best thing about this whole experience so far. If you liked any of this, if you liked any of the breakdown or just hated it, and you just want to hate some more, subscribe, like, retweet it, and talk about how bad I am. Just interact, man. I love all the information I get, just because once again on this mid-major level in the A-Sun, it's just hard to get all the information we want. So team preview Stetson, it's in the books. Well, that's 2 down. We got a bunch to go. Weeks ticking away. I think I looked at my Twitter today. I think John Rothstein said we're 115 days away now, man, and that number just keeps getting smaller, dude. I keep watching Summer League and just trying to imagine like who potentially from the league can make that jump next year to be there in the Summer League. So this time next year when I'm doing these, we're not just only doing team previews. We're talking about, hey, what did Darius McGee do last night in the Summer League? I think those conversations would be awesome to have next year. So hopefully that happens. Once again, man, like, subscribe, shout me out, come holler at me, man. This is the sunny side, man, right? So let's keep doing this thing. I'm going to stay consistent as possible, but thank you once again, and keep it sunny.